The early 2000s gaming era featured a lot of World War II games. With that being the gaming era I grew up in, I have a lot of fond memories of some of those old World War II franchises. I loved playing franchises like Medal of Honor and Brothers in Arms. Call of Duty even started off as a World War II shooter franchise. Even some of the Battlefield games were of World War II, and I remember playing Sniper Elite a lot as well, as that's a franchise that even continues today. These games came out during the much simpler times of gaming, back when you would replay the COD campaigns or the Medal of Honor games 100 times just because of how memorable the gameplay was back then, or just for the overall concept of kicking Nazi ass. In today's video, I want to talk about two of my favorite franchises that, unfortunately, have not come out with any new games in years. I want to talk about why I love them and why I think these games can exist today. I'd love to see the modern versions of some of these gaming franchises. And the two franchises I will talk about are Medal of Honor and Brothers in Arms. I have very fond memories of these franchises. I played all the Brothers in Arms games and, quite frankly, most of the Medal of Honor games, and there were quite a few. I spent countless hours playing these games time and time again. It's amazing to see how far we've come in gaming, because like when I go back and look at the gameplay of these old games, I'm like, wow, these animations don't look good, the graphics don't look good. But I can't help but have a smile on my face when I'm watching these games again, because I just remember how much fun I had back in my early days of gaming. And it's crazy just how far we've come as well, because back then, when all you got were campaigns that weren't very long, and then maybe they offered some decent split-screen co-op or network stuff. I never played online back in my PS2 days, so I can't really speak on how the online stuff went, but I just remember playing the campaigns and these missions time after time after time again, and I never got bored. I think some of these games found a few ways to stand out and make themselves unique, even if they did repeat the cycle of fighting the Axis powers during World War II. I'm honestly surprised EA has not tried to bring back Medal of Honor, or why Gearbox and Ubisoft have not tried to reboot the Brothers in Arms franchise, even though there's been rumors about it. I know these are old franchises. I mean, I'm talking about games that came out in the early 2000s, or even Medal of Honor started coming out in the 90s. And yes, I agree the World War II genre did get old, but I do think some modern World War II games could be fun based off of just how good graphics are today, the engines that run these games, and just modern gameplay ideas could be implemented into a new game today. So let's start with Medal of Honor. The franchise started back in the 1990s and was inspired by the movie Saving Private Ryan. Heck, even the story for the first three games was created by Steven Spielberg himself. Between 1999 and 2010, 17 games were made for this franchise. The first 15 were World War II specifically. And then actually they did come out with a VR game in 2020, but it wasn't really well received. Now, these games typically featured one or two styles of stories. Some games had you play as an operative or resistance member who would go on solo missions to take down the Nazis. You would invade bases, destroy Nazi technology that could turn the tide of the war, rescue people, and even eliminate high-ranking Nazi officials. And some of the other games allowed you to fight in bigger battles and with allies. You could go around missions with a squad or even a whole army, basically, during some of the greatest battles of the war, like D-Day, Operation Market Garden, and the Battle of the Bulge. The gameplay may not have aged well, but for back in its time, it was good enough. And like I said earlier, the concept of the game was very simple: destroy the Nazi war machine. And what's any better than that? But just the way the developers were able to create missions that were fun and unique, and oh my god, the soundtracks were great. A big shout out to Michael Giacchino for composing the soundtracks in this franchise. My favorite game in the franchise is Medal of Honor Frontline. You play as Jimmy Patterson, and you are an agent for the Office of Strategic Services, also known as the OSS, and the OSS tasks you with some big missions like destroying German U-boats, sabotaging production facilities, rescuing resistance members, and the biggest task of all, destroying a fighter jet the Germans are working on. Oh, and you have to take out the Nazi leader who is overseeing the project. You complete all these tasks while fighting in some of the biggest battles of World War II, like D-Day and Operation Market Garden. And perhaps my favorite part of the game is when you get to start a bar fight in a Nazi-occupied town.
Wie spielt für die Privatanstalt? Steig ein, deine Klamotten liegen hinten.
Yeah, You could tell this game came out in 2002, but this was still a very memorable moment. This game, like the rest of the franchise, offered simple and fun gameplay. There was no character or gun customization, there was no open world exploration, it was just a straightforward campaign where you run through the mission and you complete all the objectives. And while that does seem too simple in today's standards of gaming, I do miss this. I wish there were more games that were just kind of straightforward like this, where you just play through the campaign and so much effort and good quality production was put into it where it's like, yeah, I'll replay this again in a couple of years. You know a game was good if you remember random moments like the bar fight I just showed you, or one of your favorite missions from a game that came out 20 years earlier. Sadly, the franchise all but died in 2012 after the last two games went modern, and they did try to compete online with Call of Duty. And like I said, Respawn Entertainment made a VR game based in World War II back in 2020, however, it was not well received. So Brothers in Arms was another World War II franchise I grew up with. It was another memorable game that featured some better story, some better dialogue, and characters and gameplay compared to Medal of Honor. And these games focused on the US paratroopers who jumped into Normandy during the D-Day invasion. And while the game did not have, again, realistic graphics for its time, it featured a real story. It's all based on true events and locations. Heck, I remember some of the gameplay was used as B-roll footage for a D-Day documentary on, I can't remember if it was either the History Channel or the Military History Channel back in the day. And I remember watching it. I was like, oh wow, I know the game, and okay, they're using this. This is pretty cool. And the gameplay was pretty cool because you got to play as a squad leader, either Matt Baker or Joe Hartstock, depending on which game you were playing. You were able to command troops as you fought Germans to capture strategic positions and eliminate defenses. You command a squad to follow the 4 Fs: find, fix, flank, and finish. This was an authentic combat strategy that was actually used by US troops in World War II to suppress and flank the enemy. You can have one team suppress the enemy while you flank with your other team, or you can even mindlessly and recklessly charge up and risk getting your squad killed. And let me tell you, it was tough to complete missions when all your squad mates were dead and you had to run through it solo. The overall experience of playing the Brothers in Arms series is a good one. These games came out in the early 2000s, so yeah, you may not be impressed if you go back and look up gameplay here on YouTube, but they were worth playing back then. The story was emotional too, as the characters you play as deal with tough moments and struggle with the reality of being in war. And you know, in Medal of Honor, you played as a silent protagonist, while in these games you could hear yourself call out orders, and then you had cutscenes and in-game scripted moments before and after battles that immerse you into the situation.
You want me? Fucking take me! Take me!
The last game came out in 2008, and you got to play as Matt Baker again as you and your squad partake in Operation Market Garden. Both the graphics and gameplay improved, and the developers implemented a cover system that would allow you to go third person while hiding behind a wall. It kind of felt like Gears of War a bit. Then you would go back to first person when walking and running around throughout the missions. You get to control squads again, and the writing and the dialogue were top-notch, which made the game story very emotional. And the game even had some decent multiplayer. And I should mention too, you didn't just command regular soldiers, sometimes you had machine gun teams, or a team of guys that had a bazooka, or you got to command a tank. So the game gave you a variety of ways to command different troops and how to go about each of your battles with the German soldiers. And you know what, before I wrap up, I'll give a shout out to the OG Call of Duty games too. The first couple of Call of Duty games were solid for the World War II genre. Yes, they featured straightforward campaigns like some of the games I just mentioned, but it was cool to fight in so many major battles across the globe, and you also got to play as all of the Allied forces. You weren't always just US troops. Some of these games felt more personal and had characters with flair, like in Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1.
Hey, you know, my dad runs a deli back in the Bronx, makes the best pastrami sandwiches you'll ever eat.
Brooklyn, you ain't quite right.
Kinda like your sister, huh, you freaking hayseed?
Candy, you two! Stay on the ball! This ain't boot camp!
Hey, Sarge, I thought you said the French were gonna surrender. Yeah, storming the beach was fun and all, but I gotta get back. I got tickets to the Yankee games. They're playing the Red Sox. I got box seats.
Ah, shut the hell up, Broomfield. I said candy!
That was one of my favorite games, and even Call of Duty 3 had great characters and dialogue too that I think they just built on from the first couple of games that came before it. And then the pinnacle of World War II Call of Duty games was World at War. The brutality of war was depicted big time in this game. You played in some fronts that weren't always covered, like in the Pacific. And then you have Viktor Reznov, who is one of the greatest video game characters of all time. I do understand that the World War II genre got old, but I really would love to see a company's take on a modern World War II shooter. I won't even mind if there are some exploration or open world aspects to it. Call of Duty always had balls-to-the-wall moments in the Modern Warfare campaigns or the Black Ops series of games. I want to see that again, but in World War II. You can even make an alternate reality World War II game where the Axis powers win the war and now you're fighting battles in the United Kingdom or defending the United States, or go a little futuristic with crazy guns and machines like we've seen in some of the most recent Wolfenstein games. There's a lot of great modern ideas that can be implemented in a new World War II game that could revitalize the genre. And I know you cringed like I did when watching some of these clips I showed. The graphics and the animations are very old, but can you imagine playing a World War II shooter today on a PS5? Holy shit, the graphics would be amazing. Where are my fellow World War II guys at? If you are here, leave some comments down below. I'd love to know what you grew up playing, what you remember the most playing back in those days. Would you like to see the return of World War II games? I would love to hear your takes. Thanks for watching, and please support the channel in any way you can, like liking the video, subscribing for more. I appreciate whatever help you could give. Thanks for watching. Take care.